Hello all and welcome back to the Scouting Centre. I am of course your host Mr. Diz TV, and my guest started making YouTube videos in May 2020 and in that time has accumulated close to 14,000 subscribers. He's a rarity in the Football Manager community because he doesn't stream on Twitch, he streams on YouTube. He's participated and won in the Football Manager playoffs. He's one of the up-and-comers in the circuit and has recently got more involved in the Football Manager Streamer Showdown, where you'll find him on their YouTube channel, FM Streamer Showdown. He is known for his tactical prowess with GYR FM. It is, of course, your reigning defending tag team champion, Hood Gaming. Hood, how are you?
Amazing, thanks, Diz. That honestly, your intros are second to none, mate. That was absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad you included that I know a little bit about tactics as well. It's not just hammering me about it being in GYR. So yeah, I appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. I have to say, if this was some sort of tournament and me and you were bantering each other, I'd obviously say, like, you know, you're nothing without GYR. Try getting into your head. But you got to call it for what it is. You obviously know the game. I mean, you play the game so much, probably as much as anybody else in the community. So, of course, you know about the game. Thank you so much for appearing. It's great to have you on.
No, honestly, mate, thank you very much for the invite.
Excellent. And let's start with what got you into content creation. So 2 years ago when you started to make it, why?
Yeah, so initially for me, like I've always made content. So in previous jobs, what I do as a job is I work in marketing now. But when my first job ever was at a football club working in their media department. So I'd always made content. And I have a broadcast journalism degree, which consisted of a lot of filming, editing, that sort of thing. So I've always made content, and then obviously when lockdown hit, I was like, well, I'm not traveling 40 minutes each way to and from work. I'm working from home. I was watching Dr. Benji's Glory Hunter and thought, why not use your time more productively in terms of rather like, you know, that commuting time or like your lunch breaks and that sort of thing to give it a go. It felt like it was one of those now or never sort of thing. So yeah. I started making videos, did my first ever Let's Play series with Bath City, which was the most lowest tier team to me, and then it kind of went from there and has been progressing ever since.
So when you decided to make that content, I mean, you've said you were watching Dr. Benji. Is that why you chose Football Manager?
I mean, the amount of hours I've put into every Football Manager, even pre-content, is probably sickening. So I thought, well, if I'm going to play stuff, why not record it as well and try and see what happens with it. So as I said, I started a save that I was in the middle of a save anyway, but I was like, let's start something again and try it from there. Started with Bath City, and yeah, as I said, it kind of progressed from there, and that was in FM 20. So then, yeah, full game cycle on FM 21, and obviously now up on FM 22.
So let's talk about your history with Football Manager. You've said the amount of hours you've played is sickening. When did you start playing Football Manager, and how did Football Manager enter your life?
No, I'm not gonna bullshit and say I'm one of these guys who's a Championship Manager OG. That's not me. Yeah. I started playing on the first Football Manager, so FM 05. Back then it was your bog standard. I'm a Bristol City fan, so it was a bog standard Bristol City save, and we'll kind of go from there. Really, to be honest, it was kind of like the same thing every year. You'd play the same sort of game, and you'd do the same sort of thing, go through the motions every year. But now it's definitely a little bit different, thankfully.
Yeah, I was going to say, so now obviously playing Football Manager and creating content, you are exploring depths of the game you probably didn't before. What is the difference in playing the game as just a normal player to being a content creator?
When you're a content creator, in my opinion, you're always thinking of, would the average player know this? So not necessarily like with Wonder Kids or tactics or stuff like that. Just general stuff like, finding out what traits are good, finding out the hidden attributes in the game and what they are and how that impacts people and stuff like that. That was something that I never used to consider. But obviously now creating content, diving into the editor and, looking at that world of stuff and doing like experimental things and stuff like that, it's definitely a different experience from when I started doing my Bristol City save on FM 05.
Yeah, so I want to talk about your YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to talk about how you started creating content straight away, because one of the things that I noticed about you pretty early on, and I've known you for like over a year now, I think, whereas our interactions have been limited at that time, but you were incredibly consistent from day one. But you were doing different types of videos, weren't you? So you doing some let's plays, you were doing some tactic testers, you were doing some one-off content as well.
Yep.
Was that a case of trying to see which one really stuck, or was that a case of that's just what you enjoy doing?
Mixture of both. In the early time, it was kind of like throw a couple of things out there, see what sticks, see what does well. Like at that point when you're starting out on YouTube, you're sort of like sub 50 subscribers and stuff like that, and you're sending stuff to mates and being like, what do you think of this? How could I improve this? That sort of thing. The Let's Play was always the sort of tried and tested and sort of what was the standard in the community at the time. Obviously you had Ben, as I've mentioned, but Lelujo, Work the Space were the consistent sort of big hitters in that sort of space, putting out that sort of content. And then obviously at the time when Zealand was on FM Base, you started to see a different type of content, which then in turn made me think about stuff. When I was growing up, I used to watch loads of FIFA related stuff. FIFA and Call of Duty stuff was what I used to watch on YouTube back in the day. And then you see a different approach to how to make content, and certain stuff that works in other scenes. Like I mentioned, KOT4Q, the sort of NBA guy, does NBA 2K stuff and does loads of the rebuild stuff. So I was watching his stuff. I always look at different games and see what works in different areas and see if that is something that could be replicated in Football Manager. Now, some of it works, some of it doesn't, but at this point, I'm still finding that a little bit of a learning curve. As RDF said in your pod, you're sort of taking things in different phases, and I'm still very much in a learning phase, I'd say.
And then in those early days, though, doing 5 videos a day, where did you find the time? Because I know your full-time job is really busy.
Yeah.
Then, did you ever get disheartened with any of those initial videos, bear in mind the amount of work you're putting into it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can go back and watch some of them. They're still on the channel. The first episode with Bath City is filmed, on a rubbish microphone that's on my desk with a GoPro, which has bad lighting. And I could watch that back now and I'd be almost mortified. But, the fact that people watched it and stuck with it and gave me that feedback, creating content can be an expensive hobby or an expensive profession, whichever way you go about it. Equipment's not cheap. So I'd like to think that there's been a progression in terms of quality, but also how I present myself and stuff like that is something that I've been trying to work on and all that. But trying to find time is difficult for sure, especially around the job. But I mean, as I said, I was commuting 40 minutes each way plus an hour's lunch break. Gives you more time in the day. So I would try and use that time effectively and try and get videos done and stuff like that. And as I said, luckily I had a background in broadcast journalism, so I knew how to edit and stuff. So editing wasn't a big chore like it is for some people who are learning it as a new skill. So yeah, I think, it was just sort of trying to be consistent, because at the time that's what all the full-time guys were doing. Ben, Kev, Jack, they were all pushing out daily content, and I felt that was kind of like the industry standard. But sometimes you need to take a step back and go, well, these guys are doing it as their full-time job, so maybe you need to slow it down a little bit, because yes, maybe the industry does expect that of these massive creators, but maybe they may not expect it from you.
You said something pretty early on just now, which was hobby/profession. How do you treat this?
I can't treat it as a hobby anymore. I am so ingrained at looking at stats and figures and the analytics and stuff. I cannot say that this is a hobby anymore, especially with the amount of time that I put into it as well. Doing the simulations for rebuilds don't happen very quickly, and some of the different types of content, which is the sort of evergreen content, it takes longer than a let's play, in my opinion. So yeah, I can't class this as a hobby. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my profession, because it's definitely not. It's not what pays the mortgage, you know. But I'd feel I'm somewhere sort of in between those two things at the moment. You know, I'm not part-time. I've got a full-time job outside of this. You know, I work 9 till 5:30. You know, this isn't my full-time job. This isn't my part-time job. But I definitely say that I take it more seriously than a hobby.
So you mentioned about being ingrained in looking at analytics. Is that something that's always been a part of you, looking at the analytical side of any situation you were in?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as I said, you know, marketing is my job. So figuring out what works, how to speak to people, just what works. You know, we do digital campaigns at work, you know, paid campaigns on Facebook, LinkedIn, that sort of thing. So I need to look at how they're doing and, you know, if finding out if they're a waste of money or not. So naturally, I do the same with YouTube. YouTube's analytics is actually very, very good. It's pretty detailed. You can kind of customize to make it however you want to see it, whatever, you know, however you want it to be. So I'm naturally going to be drawn to that because I do it for a job, and that's the side of my job that I really enjoy, is the sort of analytical stuff. And as I said, finding out what works and what doesn't. So yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the way that I was going to approach stuff. But, you know, when you're going on stuff and you're like, okay, 3 people have watched this, cool, how do I make that better? It's a bit harder, versus now I'm grateful enough to have, you know, people who watch my videos regularly. I tried something new recently and I sent it to a couple of people beforehand, gave me honest feedback, allowed me to update it and change it and stuff like that. So I'm in a great position in that respect. So, but that's all thanks to my audience, which I'm eternally grateful for.
No, I love hearing about this stuff. And speaking about analytics, did you know 67% of people who watch the Scouting Centre are not subscribed to the channel? Wow. So if you are watching this right now, can I ask that you like this video and subscribe to the channel? Now's your time to do it. Let's get back to the interview. You see what I did there? That was genius.
I love that.
You gave me the hook.
That's all right. Just file away. Go for it.
But let's talk about now Team Hood. Is there a team that helps you create the content nowadays? Because you did mention sending some videos to a couple of people. Is there a team behind Hood Gaming now?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I subscribe to the Zealand model of things. Is I value time. So be that, you know, time to do my own stuff, time to, it may sound stupid, but time to go to the gym, time to spend time with my girlfriend, you know, all that sort of stuff. So when, you know, the YouTube partnership comes through, congratulations on yours as well, by the way, for the Scouting Centre. You can start thinking about those things. And now, naturally, don't get me wrong, it wasn't you know, I've been monetized, right, let's start hiring people to do stuff, this, that, and the other, you know. So, but over time, it definitely grew. I mean, for me, there was an area that I initially thought that I was weakest at, which was the thumbnail stuff. Now, obviously, you can get loads of impressions, but if people aren't clicking through, then people aren't watching your content. So that's why I reached out to Scott, who's my thumbnail guy, who, in my opinion, is probably the best in the scene. I think his work's phenomenal. And then, yeah, it's grown over time. I've got myself an editor now. Obviously, GYRFM is part of the team technically. You know, I pay him for, you know, the tactics that go on the channel. I feel a bit awkward at times because they're not mine, but Gareth doesn't like the content side of stuff as much. Obviously, we all know, despite being a very beautiful man, doesn't go on camera and that stuff
beard,
like that.
That beard is amazing.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? But yeah, like Gareth doesn't enjoy that side of stuff as much. So yeah, it's just kind of worked out. So they're the 3 main people, I would say. My thumbnail guy, my editor, Jack, and Gareth. But yeah, I mean, there's people that I speak to daily, bounce ideas off, you know, that sort of thing. So whilst, you know, there's a couple of people, shall I say, on the payroll, in quotations, there's so many people that I speak to on a daily basis to, as I said, yeah, bounce ideas off of, talk to on a regular basis about FM, what would work, what wouldn't, and stuff like that. So yeah, there is a team, but it's not just everyone who's on the payroll.
Yeah. So I want to ask the question then. So before you had this team, how many hours were you putting into content creation yourself?
Yeah.
And now after having this team, how many hours do you think you're putting in?
So before, I hope my boss doesn't see this. Quite a lot, to be honest. No, I'm joking. It's fine. Yeah, like I put quite a lot of time into it. I mean, I was probably doing, I don't know, probably like 2 hours before I started work, obviously hour for lunch, and then 2 hours after. So probably in and around 4 to 5 hours a day during the weekday period. I try and reserve my weekends for, time with the girlfriend, etc. But, sometimes that sort of changes. And that was just when I was just doing like the YouTube side of stuff, despite not streaming. And then obviously streaming has added a whole nother layer into that, extra evenings doing stuff and all of that stuff. So I reckon I was around 4 to 5 hours a day when I started. And to be honest, I think it's gone up despite having people on board to help me out.
Wow.
Just because of the different types of videos that we're trying to do and all of that stuff. So I think it's probably gone up a bit now.
So I want to talk about your content strategy because it's a nice little feeding in relation to the videos that you do. You do rebuilds, you do remakes, you also stream. Tell me about where those ideas come from and how they're developed.
Yeah, so obviously now I mentioned about the rebuild stuff and KOT4Q, as I've mentioned quite a few times in this video already. He's an NBA creator that I watch. He was doing rebuilds of teams and stuff like that using my GM mode, which is really good. Adds a lot of flexibility to what you can do and sort of stuff like that. Just with a couple of clicks of a button, you can release the entire NBA and just start again, which would be absolutely insane if you could do that in FM. That would save me so much time.
That's the dream, innit?
Would save me so much time. I mean, we did a video where we did a custom database. That's another person I need to shout out as well. CTXCB, the guy who does loads of my database stuff. Completely forgot about him, but he refuses to take money for his time, which is, I don't know, I've offered it, but he said no. So, but yeah, he's really good. We did a video where we released the entire world of FM, and that took him hours to set that up, going through every single club, releasing every single player from their contracts and stuff like that. So took him a couple of days, I think, of working on that in his own time. So he was a good inspiration for me on the rebuild stuff. And as I said, I'm always looking at different communities and seeing what works there, what doesn't work there, and seeing if it will work in Football Manager. I mean, again, I've seen an NFL video which was a team of Tom Brady's versus a team of Patrick Mahomes, and I tried to bring that into FM, and in my opinion it didn't work very well. It flopped in terms of the views and stuff like that. But I'm always willing to try stuff. Anything that I see that I think would be good, I'm more than happy to try my hand at it and see if my audience enjoys it and go from there, really.
I think recently one of the things that I really enjoy about your channel is the remade series, where you remake a previous or historical legend, Mark Noble, Maradona, a few more, for instance, that you've done. Where did that idea come from, and how long does that take from beginning to end to develop?
So the idea came from sort of looking at what we could do in terms of not just rebuild content, but maybe focusing it down, instead of it being a team, it being a player. And then I saw some FIFA stuff actually done on their icons in their game, and I was like, oh, well, obviously these players aren't in Football Manager, so how long would it take to remake one of these people? So it starts there. You go into the database, you find out as much information as you can about the person. Ideally, if possible, I would take someone who's been in a Football Manager or in a Championship Manager. We've done that before with like Kaká, for instance. He was still playing in Brazil in one of the early FMs, so I could just copy attribute for attribute and kind of go from there. But when you do someone a little bit more historical, like recently I've done Pele and Maradona, obviously they weren't part of Football Manager. So kind of coming up with attributes for them is interesting. The actual bit in the database in the editor doesn't take too long. It's then obviously just simming through I do 20 years of their career again. So I usually put them in, and they're either between like 15 to 18, depending on kind of when they left their first club, if that makes sense. And then, 15 to 20 years worth of sims. So yeah, that takes a while.
That's mad, isn't it? Like, the amount your computer must be ready to take off. The
Well,
amount that you're simming.
Yeah, well, that's just before we started recording. I had a few little issues with my CPU, and I guess that kind of explains why, doesn't it?
No, that's madness. That's madness. So, you explained about looking at other areas of YouTube, other games, and bringing that into the Football Manager community. When you are developing future ideas, is that something you're consistently doing? Like, how broad do you cast that net?
I'd say it's pretty broad. I mean, I'm always open to seeing how anything works on YouTube. Like, you know, I know you mentioned them the other day, the Sidemen. You've heard of them. You've watched some of
Oh
their,
my
some
God,
of their-
they are yeah, the review's gone from good to they're amazing.
Yeah.
Me and my wife have watched so many Sidemen videos the last week and a half.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I take inspiration from them. I take inspiration from, like, Mr. Beast and stuff like that. Like, obviously, these people are sort of at the top of the game. So, you know, even if I can't exactly take a Mr. Beast video about, like, you know, swimming with sharks or locking myself in a room for 100 days or anything stupid like that. But it's more like editing style and how they talk about how they make content, if that makes sense. So it's not just stuff that I can take directly in, it's their attitude to stuff, the sort of things that they look for, all of that stuff. Yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube myself, so I guess that probably does help, but you can go down a certain rabbit hole and just get focused on one thing and be convinced that it's going to work, and sometimes it just doesn't. So
I mean, I've already got a couple of great ideas. That's what you've said. So you lock yourself in a room for 100 days and only have Football Manager, or you go swimming with sharks and play Football Manager at the same time.
yeah, it's like, how many seasons can I play in Football Manager in 100 days locked in a bedroom?
Or before a shark decides you're tasty.
Yeah, just get yourself a waterproof laptop and go from there.
The future. So, I think going forward, I remember recently, I say recently now, I think it was over a year ago now actually, you were involved in the content clinic with Lelujo, I believe.
Yep.
What did you take from that feedback that was given to you live on stream from Lelujo, and how has that helped your channel going forwards?
I'm one of those people who would rather be told straight that stuff's shit than be, like, you know, talked around like, oh yeah, maybe you could improve this, maybe you can improve that. So I watched that whole stream that Lelujo did, and obviously Ben jumped in as well. And you know, whilst it wasn't, they did review my channel, but it wasn't just mine that they did, obviously. So there was plenty of stuff that you could take from what other people, the feedback other people were hearing. So it wasn't just, you know, looking at stuff on my channel. I don't think my channel got panned as hard as some of the others, potentially. But then Ben looked at my Twitter and saw that I worked in marketing and kind of expected a certain level of something. But yeah, like, honestly, being on that, Louise, my girlfriend, said it's the most nervous she's ever seen me in our, like, 6-year relationship. Because it is a big thing. Like, at the time, you know, I wasn't necessarily a massive creator. I still don't consider myself that now, by the way, but, like, you know, I wasn't a big creator, and having someone with, you know, that sort of audience and following, especially when Ben jumped in as well, it's always going to be nerve-wracking to see what these people say about you and your channel and stuff like that. And I think for people in the community, just if you were starting making content, be it Football Manager, be it anything, I think that would be a resource that people would find useful. Because, you know, there's stuff that I know because of marketing, like, you know, channel tags and metadata and working in the description and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. I know about that, but I know a lot of people won't. So there's so many different assets to YouTube that can either help you or hinder you. So those guys taking the time out of their schedule to, in theory, in my opinion, help the rest of the community, I think was so valuable. And yeah, I learned quite a lot at the time, and I think some of the comments that were made at the time, I feel like I've worked on and improved on and made things a bit better. So yeah, as I said, completely valuable thing, and I'd love them to do it more, to be honest, but I can understand why, you know, they have their own schedule and stuff. So
it's interesting to me because these are people who are at the top of this industry in relation to Football Manager content creation.
Yeah.
And where else would you have that, where, because our community, and it's something that's forgotten, I think, at times, because our community is so niche and small, but also close, you have got two of the top four, Zine and Jack being the other two,
Yeah.
Who are helping people on the ground level, so to speak, to try and rise. And
Yeah.
Maluja says about boats and rising tides, etc., etc., and that's what they're trying to do, right?
All ships float in a rising tide. And football, man, it's all well and good, the four of us doing well in the short term. But in order for us to do well in the long term, Football Manager content needs to remain hot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those things, like, I think that's why everyone potentially embraced Zealand at the time, you know, because they understand that the more people on the scene, I think RDF said it in your interview as well, that, like, the more people that watch the guys at the top, it sort of does filter down. And the more eyeballs on the community, the better. So... And then, you know, if you are streaming on Twitch or whatever, and you do get that raid, it's all about how you then handle yourself and you handle that, and how you then speak to a different audience in terms of new people onto your channel, which I think is massive again. So yeah, the more eyeballs on the Football Manager community, the better, really.
No, I love that. I love that. And also, I want to mention, in relation to you, you're a bit of a risk taker, aren't you, really? When you think about your streaming, you used to stream on Twitch. You've now moved over to YouTube, which is a bit of a gamble in relation to the Football Manager community, right? Because in relation to streaming, like 95%, 96% are probably on Twitch. Tell me why you chose YouTube to stream on, and is it a long-term strategy?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think it is a long-term strategy. Now, don't get me wrong, Twitch is still the market leader for streaming in every capacity, not just Football Manager. Twitch is still that market leader, but, you know, as you said, I was doing stuff on Twitch, and it felt like, even then at the time, I was just an affiliate. I wasn't a partner or anything like that, but it just felt like Twitch were dropping the ball with certain stuff. And now, don't get me wrong, YouTube is not the finished article, but for me, it made sense with the moves that they were trying to make the switch to where my audience was bigger, rather than grow two audiences at the same time simultaneously. Yes, I know there's a lot of crossover that you can do and stuff like that. But at the time I was thinking, right, okay, well, Twitch is in the lead at the moment. Where will that be at the end of the FM22 game cycle? Now, at the moment, at the time of recording, I still think Twitch is ahead. There's still features that Twitch has that YouTube needs to figure out and make better. But I think in the longer run, I think Amazon will sell Twitch, and then people will start migrating over to YouTube.
I think it's incredibly brave, to be fair, and it is forward thinking, because I do think you're right. I think a lot of people have mentioned the negatives of Twitch beforehand. I think it's a conversation that happens quite regularly. And as you can see of YouTube now, I think in the last 2 weeks, they've added raids, they've added gifted subs. Maybe not in the... And I don't know, because obviously I'm not streaming on YouTube. But from what I've read, it's not as fluid or smooth as it is on Twitch at the minute. But the fact that they're heading in that direction offers a genuine alternative, doesn't it?
Yeah, so for me, the main attraction for YouTube was the discoverability factor. Now, obviously, we all know Twitch has its directory format, and you find the game that you want to watch, and then you've got predominantly the big hitters at the top. So, whereas, you know, if you're trying to find, for instance, one of the saves that I'm doing live on YouTube is El Clasico network save with Murph FM. Now, if someone goes on and goes, I want to watch Real Madrid Football Manager, types that into Google, and I'm live, I'm going to pop up. So the discoverability factor, it's a different way of doing stuff. I know people behind the scenes at YouTube have had that conversation about having a catalog like Twitch does versus the general like search bar functionality. But from my point of view, finding that discoverability and the whole algorithm that is behind YouTube would be harder for Twitch to implement than some of the changes that YouTube need to make, if that makes sense. So, like, you know, having a cleaner UI for the viewer, like you mentioned, raids or live redirects, as it's called. That's an awful name, by the way. The gifted memberships and stuff like that. Like, they're all big things. Like the gifted membership side of stuff is massive. Now I don't know, you probably know a little bit more than me in terms of like, you know, some of the bigger guys on Twitch, what their split is between subs and gifted subs. But, you know, from some of the people that I watch, I know that they make up more of their revenue from gifted subs. So it's something that YouTube needed to implement. It's still in a beta period at the moment. But, you know, I watched Tim the Tatman from like a Call of Duty perspective. He was live streaming the other day when the gifted members was a thing. And I think he got 20,000 gifted members on the first day. And like,
wow.
It's definitely a progression and stuff like that. And the main thing I like about the YouTube memberships is you set the price as the creator. So,
oh, wow.
like my entry tier memberships, shall I say, is 99p a month. So, you know, and we do give...
And then what's the split with that on YouTube?
70-30.
Oh, wow. Because Twitch is 50-50, right?
Yeah. Yeah, until you get to partner, right? And then potentially you can negotiate your own sort of deal. But, yeah, so it's 70-30 in the weight of the creator. But obviously, you know, I do have a handful of members and I am massively grateful for them. But, you know, versus someone who, let's say, doesn't have Twitch Prime, you know, paying $4.99. Is it $4.99 or $4.49 for a Twitch sub?
It's $3.99. It's gone down. It's gone down to £4 now.
But like, yeah, you can kind of set your own thresholds as to what you want that to be. But then also, you know, you can do member specific content, which I'm quite bad at the moment. I'm not doing that. But that, you know, that if I were to go full time or something like that, of course I'd do a video a week for members and stuff like that. That would be exclusive to them and stuff like that. You know, there's a member section in my Discord. We do giveaways each month for members and stuff like that. So, like, I think YouTube is moving in the right direction with it, but I feel like they've got the bigger bit sorted in terms of the algorithm and the discoverability versus the bad UI, you know, the live redirects, which I've tried and still doesn't work properly. You know, and a couple of other things, but I feel like they're moving in the right direction with where they want to be. And as I said, at the time of recording, are they the market leader in streaming? No, they're not. But I feel like over the course of the next few years, they will be. So, as you said, it was a little bit of a gamble, but I'm happy on YouTube. As I said, I've got a fantastic audience, fantastic community, and you know, I've got regulars that attend the live streams regardless. So yeah, it's brilliant.
I imagine you're one of the biggest Football Manager streamers on YouTube.
I mean, Trek used to do stuff. I know Bust the Net does stuff on YouTube as well. But yeah.
But Trek's moved over to Twitch now, hasn't he? So
yeah, the deserter. No, I'm joking. I love you, Trek. But like, yeah, it's one of those things. I like the platform. I prefer it. There's a couple of things that I'd love to have different. You know, like YouTube in the analytics doesn't show you your average viewer, for instance. It tells you your concurrent viewers, so I can tell you every minute of the stream how many people are in the channel, but it doesn't give you an average. And it feels to me like that's such a small tweak that they are collecting the data for already. That would be quite nice. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, it seems like an easy fix as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you know, as I said, I think they said 2022 was going to be a big year for streaming on YouTube. So hopefully they keep coming out with more stuff, and the stuff that they've already put out, they roll out to everyone. Like gifted memberships isn't a thing for everybody yet. It's just, you know, beta testing with some of the big guys. But even then, they've been so responsive with some of it. Like I mentioned that Tim the Tatman stream, he had. Initially, when I think it went live, it was you could only gift 5, 10, and 20 members. And then I was in a stream of his yesterday on YouTube or the day before, and you can gift individual memberships now. So like,
oh wow,
you know, it's like it's moving quite quickly. So yeah, I think they're trying to move things in the right direction, which is why I'm quite excited to see how things go over the next 12, 18, 24 months.
That was one of the feedbacks that I heard in relation to you couldn't gift to specific members and you could only give 5, 10, 20. So the fact that they've already responded to that, I mean, I don't know whether you can choose who you gift it to, but if you can do individual memberships as well, that's massive as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, but also there's a feature on YouTube where you have to say that you want to receive.
Oh, wow.
So...
let me find that. I'm just going to tick yes.
No, but that's the thing. I mean, you can go in and you can, because you know, the idea with the live redirects or raids is to try and You basically have to set your channel up to say, for instance, mine is set up to say anyone I subscribe to on YouTube can raid me or live redirect to me, and vice versa. But the idea is to try and stop hate raids, which I kind of understand. But yeah, I think it needs to be a little bit more fluid and work a little bit better. But as I said, the audience isn't fully there on YouTube yet for streaming. But as I said, interesting couple of years coming up. So you never know where it's going to be in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. Hello all, I hope you enjoyed the Scouting Centre with Hood Gaming. Hood, one of the up-and-comers in the Football Manager community. But I've got a request for you. I've noticed 67% of you who are watching my videos are not subscribing to the channel. So can I please ask that you do me that favour? You press that subscription button. You like this video right now. Right now. I'm giving you this time to like it. And then also, if you're listening to it on Spotify, please can you give this a 5-star review? It means the absolute world to me and means we can continue to push out Scouting Centre content. Let's get back to the interview. And then the last thing in relation to YouTube. So how do you deal with some negative comments that occasionally come your way? How do you deal with them? And what advice would you give to somebody in a similar position?
Negative comments are always going to be a difficult one. You know, like regardless of what they are, you know, I've had comparisons of me to Luke, for instance, quite a few times, you know, because we do similar sort of content and stuff like that. And, you know, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. And I know that's difficult to do. Like my girlfriend does YouTube at the moment, or does YouTube as well. I'm the smaller creator in our house.
Oh wow! But
she gets much worse comments than I do. So I think the FM community is much nicer than the stuff she does. But yeah, I mean, she gets awful comments about like her weight and stuff like that. It's horrendous. Whereas mine are just like, oh, you copied this video idea, or like whatever. You know, I don't think there's anything that's massively original in any particular scene. I mean, I always find this when I worked in football. You could try and find something that someone else has done and put your spin on it or something like that. But in terms of finding out a brand new original idea, I don't think there's that many that crop up every year. So negative comments are always part and parcel of it, and I try and either completely ignore it or just see it as engagement on the channel. Or if it is constructive feedback, which I love, if there is constructive feedback, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with the person and figure out what made them feel like that, if there's anything that I could improve or anything like that. So yeah, you know, in terms of criticism, if it's constructive, I'm fine with that. If you come in and start, you know, swearing in the comments saying, oh, this is whatever, that's not going to be met with as much enthusiasm on my part.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I just think it's important that future content creators know that this is how you kind of deal with that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very difficult if you're not getting loads of views or not getting loads of interaction, and the interaction that you get is negative. I get that, but you'd like to think that, or I do think as well, the Football Manager community as a whole is pretty darn positive. So yeah, I mean, as I said, try and take it with a pinch of salt, or, you know, just talk about it with someone. Like I talk about like my negative comments with my partner Louise and stuff like that, and she does vice versa. And to a point, it's not that we just like laugh it off in the end, but it's like, oh, look at what this person said and stuff like that. So yeah, it is difficult to deal with these comments at times, but yeah, just try and not take it too seriously, because you have to remember, for the most part, it's probably someone sat behind a display picture that's not them, without their real name, that probably wouldn't say it to your face.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And then let's move on in relation to you and the Football Manager tournament circuit.
Okay.
Now, that's going amazing for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm quite happy with how it's progressed. I mean, it's been, I think my first competition was in December. So yeah, you know, 6 months later, it feels like I've been in pretty much all of them now, apart from the Showdown. And, you know, I've not done Down the Local or Road to Legends or stuff like that. But yeah, it feels like I've gone through quite a few, and yeah, it feels like it's been pretty successful.
-2 goal difference, yeah.
Doesn't
Top
matter.
of a -2 goal difference.
Means he avoids a quarter-final as well, which is absolutely massive for Mozza and his team.
Bonkers.
I feel recently more so you've moved into the commentary section. So you did the Super League, channel with the commentating on that, and then you also did the play-by-play.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an avenue you want to go down?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I love that side of it as well, because I feel like I have a knowledge of the game enough to sort of help a casual viewer understand a little bit more about what's going to happen, and different actions that people take in the game. Now, don't get me wrong, I've done commentary with RDF, and he knows more about the tactics side of stuff and how the game works and whatever, but like, I feel like I can talk about the game enough to add something to that. I feel like there'd be nothing worse for me than just sitting there and not really saying anything. Like, I'm sure you felt the same on the lowdown. Like, it feels like you want to add something, to the production. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy the play-by-play stuff. I enjoy being on the commentary teams. I enjoy the drafts and crafts I did for the FM playoffs with Tony Jameson. And those guys, yeah, it was brilliant. I love that side of stuff of the drafting scene, as well as competing myself.
Well, I was going to say, I think that opens you up to then also establishing relationships with a lot more people by being involved in these. You mentioned Tony Jameson, for instance, RDF, a few other people. Is that what you find is the best part of being involved in these competitions?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I wanted, it felt like FM21, I did a lot of content on my own. And that was something that I wanted to change in this year's game cycle. And by being part of the drafting scene, shall we say, I've spoken to so many different people, and it's honestly been an absolute pleasure. Like, I love the draft element of stuff. You get certain people in drafts who, when they're drafting, will, deafen up in Discord and talk to their chat and stuff. I'm all there to... Don't get me wrong, I don't ignore my chat, or they probably will say I do. I try and talk to the people in the draft, and sort of like, that's where you forge these sorts of friendships that you wouldn't necessarily have had without the drafting scene. So I think it's such a massive part of the community. And yeah, as I said, I've met and spoken with some fantastic people through that. Strikerless tactics, competitors ending their draft accidentally too early, and a team full of Toms. The Streamer Showdown Season 4 draft had everything. My name is Steve, or Hood Gaming, and in today's video we are going to recap all of the squads that were drafted on draft night, and I will give my prediction as to who I think is going to win Season 4 of the Streamer Showdown.
And recently you've been more involved in the Football Manager Streamer Showdown behind the scenes page, obviously taking part in looking after the socials, and then also taking part in the YouTube page. Mm-hmm. So how has it been for you to now be involved in the Streamer Showdown?
In a word, eye-opening. Yeah. The amount of meticulous prep work that goes into everything, from the rehearsal drafts that take place to all the work that, for instance, people like yourself do on the lowdown, and to get that ready, all the stuff that Matt or Nerdphonic does behind the scenes to make sure, new people are ready, they've got the right stuff set up, for the advertising hoardings, or like the scenes that they've got and stuff like that. The amount of work that goes in that people don't see on a Wednesday, Saturday or Sunday when the event is taking place is ridiculous. The calls after the event for everyone to give their feedback that go on until I don't know, I've almost passed out in my computer at 2 a.m. There's so much that you can sit and learn. So it is an honor to be involved in that sort of thing. And yeah, as you've said, I've done a couple of different bits, like the YouTube channel, working with, the likes of yourself, Sai, Breezy, and stuff like that has been fantastic. I speak to you guys a lot on a regular basis as well, which is great. But also, yeah, the behind the scenes stuff, massive shout out to Millie. I don't know if the showdown would happen without Millie, and, great guy doing all the data entry, him, Pumpster, all the guys who helped out last time with me on the socials as I was covering Mad. It is the pinnacle of the community, in my opinion, and as I said, it's just an honour to be involved.
Any hopes for being involved on camera in the future? I
mean, yeah, of course. I mean, if you're in the drafting scene and you don't want to be part of the showdown, then I think you'd need to potentially reconsider why you're drafting to a point. Like I love the drafting side of stuff, and I know there's plenty of stuff that I need to work on and get better at in terms of being on camera and being live and stuff like that. But I'd like to think that sometime in the future, be it this game cycle, next game cycle, I'd like to think that opportunity would be there. I mean, be that being on the lowdown, be that drafting myself, I would relish that opportunity should it come up.
Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed with the future. You never know what's going to happen. And like I say, I think you being involved in the Discord has been quite fresh for everyone as well in relation to what you bring to the YouTube channel, what you bring to the socials when you're covering for Mad. It was great to see.
Thanks, man. That means a lot, honestly.
And then in relation to being a content creator then, for you, what is the worst thing about being a content creator?
Putting a video out and seeing 10 out of 10. Genuinely, yes. It's horrendous. Like I said about the when I did 11 Ronaldos versus 11 Lionel Messi's was the first one of these I did. I put it out and it was 10 out of 10, and I was like, oh, that took so long to set up and record and edit and get the thumbnail right, and then it just flops. It's very disheartening. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to hit 1 out of 10s all the time. So for those of you guys who don't know, YouTube ranks your most recent 10 videos and gives you a ranking out of 10 as to where your most recent upload falls. So like, yeah, putting a video out and leaving it a couple of hours and then coming back and seeing a 10 out of 10 is an absolute nightmare.
No, I can fully agree with that. Nothing worse than that belly, especially when you've had a 1 out of 10 the video before, and then the next one is a 10 out of 10. There's the roller coaster of emotions that brings.
Oh yeah, I find that all the time. Like with popping a rebuild out on a Sunday. If I put a video out on Monday or Tuesday's video, I'm a bit like, well, the weekend's video did this. So, but yeah, like it's one of those things. You have to sort of, as I said, try and test different stuff, and sometimes it'll work and it'll take off and it'll bang, and sometimes it doesn't. But as I said, I'm still learning, man. I've not cracked YouTube by any stretch, so yeah, it's still a learning process.
And then what's the best thing about being a content creator so far?
Interacting with everybody. Genuinely, like being part of that draft community scene, from like stream numbers and stuff. Yeah, okay, there's not as many people in the stream as there would be if I were doing my Red Star save or like my save with Murph where I'm Real Madrid. But like for me, it's just interacting with people and not making this like isolated thing, like me just sat in a room with a camera and that's it. So like the whole interaction point of it for me is the best part of being a content creator, I'd say.
See, I find it a bit rare, to be fair, and full disclosure, I do have a limited knowledge of YouTube. I'm kind of widening my net as I go on, but I do find it rare the amount of collaboration that happens within Football Manager. I don't see it necessarily in other games as often as well. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult in some instances to collaborate. Now, I think, the network game is a prime example. You've got 4 massive content creators that need to make the same time slot available every week to make that work, which is difficult. Now, I personally thought that when FM introduced versus mode, you'd see a lot more stuff. But even then, it's not been massive. I've done a couple of versus things on the channel. We've taken on different people in versus mode to see how it would work and stuff like that, and it's not done as well, and I don't know why that is. Like I did a video on my channel with Pumpster, which when I watched it back, when I got it back from my editor, I was like, this is fucking hilarious. But it did well and stuff, but like I enjoy making that video, so I will continue to make that series regardless of if the numbers aren't the 1 out of 10s like I mentioned earlier. Like you have to have that enjoyment factor. It cannot just be purely analytical in terms of the stuff you're making. And then I also think in relation to content creation, I think a large part of it is having the support of your loved ones. How supportive has your partner been in your content creation?
Yeah, I heard Trek say that my missus must hate my company.
Well, this is why I did ask that. I mean, it's close to the end, so I've squeezed it in because I want proof, I want confirmation that your missus, in fact, does not hate you.
I don't think so. She certain days she might. No, it's one of those things, right? She's very understanding. As I mentioned earlier, she creates content herself. While she doesn't stream or anything like that, she knows the sort of demands of trying to balance a YouTube channel with a full-time job and stuff like that. So she knows that sort of struggle as well. And we're both, quite accommodating with each other. I stream usually on a Tuesday and Thursday evening and then on a Sunday, but usually those other evenings and stuff are reserved for like us, if that makes sense. Like, neither of us sit on our phones or like have a laptop out or anything. It's kind of like we'll spend time with each other and try and make that time so that, like yesterday I was streaming in the evening, so we try and spend that time when I'm not sat in my desk together and doing stuff and trying to do different stuff. And yeah, it sounds silly, but yeah, you 100% need that buy-in from your partner or loved ones to make this work, I think.
I fully agree. And then in relation to you, if you could give any advice to a future content creator, what would your advice be?
To a point, back yourself. Like if you're creating content that you would enjoy watching, keep doing it. Like, don't get disheartened by numbers. Now, I've said earlier that I am very analytical. I do look at the numbers side of stuff. So it may come across as a little bit hypocritical, as I've said that I watch numbers like an absolute hawk. But like, if you're finding content that you're enjoying, like you're making content that you're enjoying and you find entertaining and stuff like that, then keep going with it. Like those first 100 subscribers, for instance, on YouTube will be the hardest 100 you will ever get. I don't know how you've found it, Diz. Like, it feels like there's certain, I don't know, there's obviously not, but mentally in my brain it feels like there's certain milestones that when I've got to it, if I've felt like it's moved to the next level. I know that sounds stupid, but like, when I got my
fully agree.
When I got my first 100, I felt like the next sort of 100 came a lot quicker, and then then you get to 1,000 and stuff like that. And recently I think I got to 2 million views or something like that, and it felt like it jumped to another level again. YouTube has that algorithm, man, and you just need to feed it with content that you think people will enjoy. So that's the main thing. If you're making content that you think is entertaining, your mates think is entertaining, you're always going to be able to improve. I'm sure even the big guys at the top were always looking for ways to improve as well, regardless of whatever niche you're creating in. But yeah, if you're making stuff that you find entertaining, your friends find entertaining, just keep at it, and hopefully it will happen for you.
And then finally, what is the future for Hood Gaming?
Good question. I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording about, I don't know if I see this as a potential for a full-time thing. Like, my full-time job is very good. I get paid quite nicely because of that. So whilst I am earning money on YouTube, it would very much need to get to a point where that amount of money coming into my bank account each month was covered for, before I even considered it. Like I've said, I see this as more than a hobby but not a profession yet, and I still think that is the case, and I still probably think that will be the case in 12 months time or whatever. But I'd like to just keep progressing. Of course, I've got milestones that I'd like to hit, like for me 20,000 subscribers is going to be a big one. I'd always like to improve my audience numbers on Streamlight and stuff like that, but the main thing for me is just keep enjoying it.
No, I love that. I really do. And your link is in the description below. So if you are watching this, please make sure you subscribe to Hood Gaming. Make him get that step closer to 20,000 subscribers. Hood, I want to thank you so much, Steve, for coming onto the Scouting Centre. You're somebody who I've waited on for quite some time. I think I approached you last year, to be fair. It was always going to happen at some point, so I'm really glad we could make this happen.
No, honestly, Diz, I really appreciate it. I've been catching up with the interviews that you've done this week and stuff like that. They're honestly brilliant, mate, so just keep up the good work. You're shining a real spotlight onto people in the community and really getting the best out of people, I feel, when you interview them. So yeah, keep it up, man, and go down there as well and subscribe to Diz and the Scouting Centre and drop a like on the video.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Steve. And like Steve says, like Hood Gaming says, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, go into the links and subscribe to everything about Hood. And then please make sure that you do the same with me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Scouting Centre. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.